Hey everyone, I'm Andrew, an independent game developer who develops independent games, specifically one game called R.A.M, which will be playing in the background while I talk. So, have you heard of Blackthorn Prod? If you've ever dipped a toe into the world of YouTube game dev, I'm guessing that you probably have. They're a little-known 500,000 subscriber YouTube channel that arranges these big, multi-studio, collaborative, competitive game jam, challenge, devlog things. 6 devs make a game without communicating. 6 devs make a game without communicating. Hardcore edition. 6 devs compete to make the best game for $10,000, etc. It's a catchy format that pulls a lot of views. But, have you ever wondered what the view is like from the other side of the glass? What would it actually be like to participate in one of these videos? Well, lucky you, because I, along with my studio's co-founder Toby, reached out to Blackthorn about contributing to one of their collaborations. And they said yes. 9 months ago. Yeah, we'll get to that part. Anyway, for all the aspiring and perspiring YouTube dev dudes out there, today I'm going to part the curtain and give you a behind-the-scenes breakdown of the Blackthorn Prod experience. Early October, the collaboration begins. We're assigned the task of being the second dev team in a Pass the Game challenge, a relay-style game jam where several teams would take turns adding to the same game project without communicating their intent to each other. If you're the secret first dev who made these sprites, huge shout out to you and expect to be credited in full as soon as Blackthorn replies to this DM. Mid-October, we finish our contributions to the Pass the Game project and send it back to Blackthorn as instructed, so it can be passed on to the next dev. We now shift gears to making a short devlog segment for Blackthorn's final video that will explain the features we added to the game. Every dev team in the collab is completely responsible for editing their own segment of the video. Efficient. End of October, our devlog segment for the Pass the Game video is finished and ready to go. All is well. Except...
This was not part of the initial plan, but we accidentally sent the first dev's work to 2 devs, so now we need to run with it.
Alright. I mean, that's weird and has vaguely terrifying implications about the organizational competence behind this project, but I'm sure it's fine. A late video is better than no video. Shit happens. It's all good. Surely it'll all be good, right? Ooh, look, they're offering us a second spot in a collab. This one's a winter-themed Battle of the Engines concept, where 3 teams using 3 different game engines would make 3 short games each, using time limits of 10 minutes, 1 hour, and 1 day respectively. I thought this one was a little bit overwrought, but regardless, that's exposure, baby. Count us in. November 27th, our 3 engine battle games are finished and the corresponding devlog segments are nearing completion, but we're not sure if we can make the previously established due date of November 30th. We message Blackthorn to ask if we can move the deadline 1 day later. They don't reply, forcing us to assume the worst and just put on the jets to get it done for the 30th like originally agreed. November 29th.
Hey man, change of plan. I think it would be better if we do a special teams-only Pass the Game challenge. The Battle Engine series isn't performing too well, which is why we've come to this decision. I hope it's not too late.
We reply to inform them that it was too late. They graciously concede our point.
Okay, for Winter Engine Battle, no worries. We'll have to make the episode then. Thanks for taking part. The project will see the light of day.
Right, there was definitely, at this point, no worries. But hey, at least they said the Pass the Game video is almost done. We'll take what we can fucking get. 1 week later, we asked Blackthorn to confirm that they received our devlog segment since we hadn't heard from them. No reply. Another week passes. We ask Blackthorn for an update on the Pass the Game video since the already twice delayed release window has come and gone and we've still heard nothing about recording our reaction to the final game. No reply. 1 month passes. In an act of desperation, we messaged Blackthorn stating our intent to make literally this video if they didn't immediately tell us what was going on. This finally provokes a reply. They admit that the engine battle project is in fact abandoned, but assure us that the Pass the Game video that was apparently nearing completion 2 months ago is still in progress, but will now be delayed until March. A week later, they backpedal. They now think they can salvage the engine battle in a nebulously modified form if they can just cut out 2 of the 3 games each dev submitted to optimize viewer retention. We have at this point completely ceased to give a shit. We're giving whatever diplomatic responses are necessary to maybe have a chance that the 2 weeks of time we put into these collabs wouldn't be completely wasted. We said, fuck it, let us know what changes you need. They don't reply. 3 days pass. We ask again by what time we need to make the changes to the video we already made so they can use it for the new version of the video they were supposed to make 2 months ago. They say by the end of the month is fine. End of February. We submit our revision and ask if the Pass the Game is still coming out in March as planned. No reply. 1 week passes. We ask again for an update. No reply. The month of March passes. We ask a 3rd time for an update.
Hey there, apologies for the late reply. The Pass the Game challenge is a branching edition, but the project drags on with very little change from dev to dev, so it's difficult for us to see how the episode will be inspiring/entertaining enough for our viewers. We thought of releasing a condensed version or turn it into our first YouTube short. If you want to release your work on the project, go ahead, however. We understand your patience has run out on this.
They were correct. We finally pulled the plug, or rather we tried to pull the plug, but they never replied to the DM we sent to initiate the conversation where we pulled the plug. This was 3 months ago. So, where does this leave us? Well, I guess I've got 4 bastard mini devlogs for random game jams I did 9 months ago. Not exactly ideal content. But still, Toby and I put quite a bit of work into these, and I think they'll be fairly entertaining even out of context. The only problem was that I couldn't just post them to my channel a cappella and expect people not to ask questions. I know some people will consider the level of detail I got into regarding our stupid behind-the-scenes soap opera to be excessive, tiresome, or unprofessional, etc. And I kind of agree. This is not how I'd prefer to be using my channel. But, in order to salvage some value from these videos, I'd basically be forced to explain the Blackthorn situation to some extent, and if I had to waste your time explaining it, then I was damn well going to make it entertaining, and, well, if I put my own bitterness aside, this train wreck taken in summary was objectively fucking hilarious. These guys had us jumping through hoops like idiots for half a year. At this point, the only silver lining I'm gonna find in this experience is clowning on them a little bit. Okay, with all the stinky YouTube drama out of the way, I'm pleased to finally present our permanently out of context Blackthorn Prod devlogs. Ayo, Xylem team coming at ya. I'm Andrew.
And I'm Toby.
And we're currently working on our debut project, Random Access Mayhem, the roguelike shooter with no player character. What does that even mean? You can watch our devlogs to find out. Anyway, the game. We'd been handed the skeleton of a top-down shooter with a procedural map generator. You controlled a reptile-looking thing who could shoot arrows. The arrows could stick into walls. As far as foundations went, it was a pretty blank slate, but realizing this is also when I think we both started to salivate a little bit. Our own project, R.A.M, was a top-down shooter. The task I was actively working on in R.A.M was designing combat mechanics for new playable characters. Are you thinking what I'm thinking, Toby?
Why yes, Andrew, I think I am.
Bazinga. Let's get some gameplay in this thing. What kind of gameplay, though? Well, when Toby and I were having our initial Discord call looking over the game, we noticed that we'd both independently entered some sort of fugue state and carpeted every surface of the map with arrows. Instead of questioning the validity of our free will, we chose to conclude that sticking arrows into things was an inherently fun mechanic, and that we should iterate on it ruthlessly. First vector of improvement, arrows interact with walls, but not with other arrows. That's no fun, does not spark joy. We immediately updated arrows so they could slice each other in half and litter the ground with broken tails. What does this achieve? Currently nothing in-game, but the dopamine release speaks for itself. Next, I thought it would be really cool if you could shoot arrows from behind and split them like Robin Hood.
Wait, hold on a second. We need enemies in a game loop first.
Oh, yeah, that's probably true. Next, we thought about how sticking arrows into things could translate into a combat system. Our first idea of arrows being destructible seemed to lean toward a physicsy sandbox type approach, so we doubled down on that and made enemies big circular blobs that were very easy to do math on. They run simple rigid body physics that can be pushed around and rotated by arrow impacts. The real kicker though is that once you turn the enemy slime into a pincushion, you can hit the arrow stuck into it with a special blunt arrow. This exerts force like a lever and sends the enemy spiraling harder than Unity's stock prices. All that was left was slapping a weak point on its ass and boom, instant combat loop.
Ouch.
While I fiddled with slime physics, Toby was busy hacking at an interactive main menu, temp sound effects, a pause screen, health bars, rudimentary level progression, and, all the stuff that video games need besides slime physics. We also named the game Aerodactyl, because this is what pterodactyls look like. In the end, a lot of our sandboxy arrow mechanics were left in the proof of concept phase by the time we had to hand the project off, but the game at least had a solid foundation for its fundamental systems, and hopefully some of the later devs will have ideas on how to make all these arrow fragments relevant to the combat. Xylem team signing out. Hey, hope you enjoyed. Next up is our 3 devlogs for the engine battle. Toby actually made the first one completely by himself, so shout out to him. Also apologies in advance for the RAM plug spam, but in the words of Sun Tzu, if one is to be paid in exposure, you'd better expose yourself.
Hi, I'm Toby, one half of Xylem Studios. Check out the demo for our game R.A.M Random Access Mayhem on Steam. Okay, timer is set, empty project is made, let's go. So making a winter-themed game in 10 minutes is tough, but I think I have an idea that I can pull off. Like many people, I've been playing Suika games, so I'm going to try and recreate a holiday-themed version in 10 minutes. First, I'm just going to make a quick candy cane box to hold all the festive items, then I'll make a rigid body ornament. We're going to rely on the physics engine to handle all the movement of the objects, so I'm just going to store them in an array and have them spawn where the player clicks. Yep, that seems good. Okay, now I just got to duplicate and swap the sprite and colliders for the rest of the objects. I'm going to go with a wreath, a gingerbread guy, a present, and of course a Christmas tree. I add all these scenes to an array, and then I write the code that runs when a signal comes in of two of the same object colliding. We're getting tight on time already, so fingers crossed this works. Uh-oh, something is not working. Quick bug fix later, and literally 6 seconds left. I just have to hope I didn't miss anything else. Well, it kinda works. Sometimes the collisions are detected, or it spawns in 2 of the next one, and I didn't have time to add in a score, but it is pretty fun to click around and stack things up. Given the time window, I'm pretty happy for 10 minutes of work.
Heyo, it's Andrew Cunningham from Xylem here. I'm the guy who makes those RAM devlogs. Check them out. Cool. They're for this game called Random Access Mayhem, which is like a roguelike, but you control the enemies instead of a player. It has a free demo and
Northern Lion.
You should play it. Okay, 1 hour game. Okay, theme is winter. Winter has snow. Snow has to be plowed or it makes ice. Ice physics, snow plow. Done. I had some old image manipulation code lying around, and I figured I could use it to simulate clearing a path through snow by erasing pixels of a white mask texture around the player. Question though, what does a game made in 1 hour with no pre-made art assets look like? Answer, either very simple or really ugly. I struggle with simplicity, but fortunately I'm fine with ugly. That said, meet the game map. It took some time to cut out the buildings and slap on collision boxes, but it was well worth it in exchange for completely removing environmental art and level design from the equation. Also, the snowplow. I'd never programmed vehicle physics before, but managed to get it vaguely car-like by repeatedly bashing the code with my triumvirate omni tool of linear acceleration, exponential interpolation, and vector component isolation. Now just add some polish, give score for each pixel cleared, realize I've forgotten how font rendering works in Godot 3, and that's a wrap. It's pretty bad, actually, but mildly funny, so I'll count that as a win. Hey Toby, you know what's crazy?
What's that, Andrew?
I heard people sometimes make games with more than 2 spatial dimensions.
Wow, that's wacky. What's the 3rd dimension for?
I don't know, but if you tried it for the Blackthorn jam, you could use all these cheap low-poly stock assets. So yeah, we made our first ever 3D game. Neither of us knew anything going in about 3D modeling, rigging, or animation, and coming out of the experience, we still don't. It was clear that learning all these skills in 24 hours while still making the game would be impossible, so we committed to leaning as much as we could on built-in Godot rendering features and stock models to handle the aesthetic side of things, while we focused more on the conceptual and mechanical work that our 2D skill sets would carry over to. It was kind of like if mid-2010s asset flips were
Based.
Anyway, we needed a premise that would restrict the scope as much as possible, and so settled on a sort of unholy fusion between the cabin segments from Inscription and 2020 best game of all time, Sauna 2000. You would roam the interior of a small log cabin and keep a fire stoked to stave off hypothermia. The door isn't locked, but escape is impossible nonetheless due to the extreme cold and... Northern Finland had a pretty bad Krampus problem in the 1980s. The premise was brutally simple, but the idea was that we could just keep bolting on little micro games around the cabin to divide the player's attention and build up a sort of minimalist survival management sim. While I worked on letting the player pick up and drop objects and hacked in a wood chopping minigame, Toby set about designing the cabin's interior, setting up a panoramic vista outside the door, and creating our... Spoilers, it's a T-posing PS1 Santa Claus with red lights for eyes, proof that a volumetric flog slider can compensate for any amount of rigging skill. We made the decision from the outset to steal Inscription's weird grid-based movement and fixed camera angles, really just because it seemed like a fun twist, and this inevitably pushed the game's feel pretty far toward the jank end of the kinesthetic ludometer. Maybe it's just because I've been playing a lot of Rain World recently, but I decided to treat this jank as a feature and lean into it with the inventory management, or rather the lack thereof. Your character only has their 2 hands, and using one to hold or interact with an object means physically holding down either of the left or right mouse buttons respectively. Let go for more than a moment and the item drops to the floor comically and may or may not shatter into dust. The logs are very cold. This, as well as just being funny, I like to think simulates the feeling of fumbling around with numb hands trying to light a match before freezing to death, which is kind of fitting for the setting. Ultimately, we couldn't add too many sub-games within the time constraint, but ended up with the simple loop of grabbing logs, chopping them, adding them to the stove, lighting them with paper and a candle, closing the door to minimize smoke inhalation, shutting the windows when they blow open, and of course, periodically fending off Krampus with beer bottles. If he reaches the cabin, you better keep your eyes on the door until he wanders off, otherwise... And that is all I have. Before I wrap this up though, one last thing. If you just so happen to have stumbled across this video as one of the other developers who worked on these collabs, please reach out. We're very curious to hear whether our experience with Blackthorn's closer to the exception or the rule. Based on anecdotes from the one other Blackthorn veteran we've managed to talk to, and the fact that Blackthorn won't give us the other devs' contact info themselves, I have a hunch it's the latter. Alright, that's all for me. See you next time.